ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here, Sports Talk Nation. Michael Cohen here with you. Glad you could join us here today. This is now the day after the trade deadline has now come and gone, and we're going to talk all about it. We're going to start with the Mets, then we're going to go to the Yankees because, man, there's a lot to discuss with both of these teams right now. Both teams, if I said it once, I will say it again because really nothing that much has changed in the last few weeks. Both of these teams are in the same spot. Both teams are in dogfights for their division titles. Both teams are in dogfights to stay out of the wild card. And both teams came into this trade deadline period needing a lot of help. They needed pitching help, specifically in the bullpen. They needed help on the offensive side. For the Mets, it was the outfield. For the Yankees, obviously with the injury to Aaron Judge, that's one story. But more importantly, they needed a lot of help on the left side of the infield. Getting more of that in just a minute. And really, I think in many ways, both teams answered a lot of the questions. Not all the questions, obviously, but they answered some of the questions, especially of the players that were available to them. Now, we'll start off with the Mets. And I'll be honest with you. When I first heard of the trade of Jose Butto and Blake Tidwell and another prospect to San Francisco for Tyler Rogers, who at 34 going to be a pending free agent, I was like, wait, what? What? Really? What? But when you sit down and you step back from it for a second, I was like a lot of people, I was really stunned by the trade. It really was. But when you step back from the trade and you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. Now, Butto, who had been a pretty good pitcher for the Mets out of the bullpen and as a spot starter for the last couple of years, wasn't having an effective year this year. In fact, got shelled in this past road trip against the San Diego Padres. And Blake Tidwell, we know, was not very good in the couple outings he was here at the Major League level. So for the Mets to go out there and package these guys, to go out there and get a reliever in Tyler Rogers, who really has been having an outstanding season coming in. Okay, guy had a 1.80 ERA with the San Francisco Giants. He's a submariner, and as we know in Mets history, they've had guys like Chad Bradford, Joe Smith, who, when they are going right, can be very, very deceptive with the submarine arm. So they're going to bring him in, see how he does here. That's a big part of this bullpen, but that wasn't the finishing piece. That wasn't the finishing piece because David Sterans then went ahead and made an even better trade, where they didn't have to dip too deeply into their minor league systems or too deeply into some of their young players that they value the most, and went out there and able to get the St. Louis Cardinals closer, Ryan Helsley. And now all of a sudden, what started off as kind of a day where you're sitting there going, what is David Sterans doing, to saying, I see what David Sterans is trying to do here. And it's a couple of very shrewd moves. It bolsters a bullpen that has been stretched out at times this year. I mean, there have been games this year where we've seen Reed Garrett or Ryan Stanek get shelled in a couple of games, especially Stanek, who has had a rough season this year with the Mets. And you put these guys in a spot now where you can now not put them in pressure innings, let's say in the 7th, 8th inning. You can, let's say, put them in the 6th inning. Have them come in case a starter has to leave early in the 5th inning, okay? In those kind of situations, and now it gives Carlos Mendoza a lot more opportunities to play around. You have Brooks Riley back in there too, who just came back off of injury. Gregory Soto, who the Mets acquired a week ago from the Baltimore Orioles. So 3 new pitchers, really 4 if you include the return of Brooks Riley, now part of this bullpen, and all of a sudden it's looking it's a pretty solid unit for the Mets going forward, leading up to as a bridge to Edwin Diaz late in games. So from that standpoint, you got to applaud David Sterans. You got to applaud Steve Cohen and this crew for focusing in on that bullpen. And is it the perfect model? No. Obviously, I would love to have seen the Mets go out there and get a starting pitcher. They had dabbled in the Sandy Alcantara market with the Miami Marlins. That really didn't develop at all. Alcantara ended up not going anywhere. Obviously, for those who wanted to dream the dream of a reunion with Jacob deGrom, not going to happen. Obviously, Texas is back in the mix in the AL wildcard, so that wasn't going to happen. So the Mets had to go out there and try to mimic what the Dodgers did a year ago, which was to rely heavily on their bullpen to get to a World Series and win a World Series championship, and that's what the Mets are kind of trying to do here. Now, they have a lot of pieces that they can move around. Obviously, if a Tyler McGill gets healthy, you can put him in the rotation. You can put him in the bullpen when you get to the late part of the year, towards September and October. You could, whatever you want to do with Paul Blackburn. I don't know what the Mets want to do with him when and if he comes back from the IL. But there's options for those guys. Then you have the guys that you are set with as your starting five: Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Peterson, Clay Holmes, who's been shaky a bit of late, and Frankie Montes, who's been shaky a bit of late. None of these guys, I mean, all these guys have been a little bit shaky at times this year, been solid to shaky. But if you can get good, solid performances, 4 or 5 innings out of these guys, and this is the way the game is nowadays, and get to this bullpen, and if these guys live up to their track record, okay, as a bridge now to going to Edwin Diaz, makes things a little bit easier, and especially if you have Hennessy now in the 8th inning, wow. I mean, Hennessy has been a pitcher who's been off the charts at times. He's 31 years old, okay, and he is a free agent, I believe, at the end of the year. So there is that gamble as well. But 3 ERA, a 139 whip. Now, last year, much better. He had a 2 ERA last year, but 21 saves this year. So you are in a spot where you can have the 8th inning with this guy coming in, setting up for Edwin Diaz. It shortens the game. It really does. So from that standpoint, the Mets have to be happy about where they are in that regard. The other thing that the Mets did is this. They, without making a move, gave a ringing endorsement to 3 of their top young players who are major contributors in the Major League system. And that, of course, is Mark Vientos, Brett Baty, Ronnie Mauricio. These guys have been starting to hit of late. All 3 players are very young. We can sit here and debate where you want to have these guys play. Mauricio, should it be at third? Should it be at second? Baty can play anywhere in the infield, and even in the outfield for that matter, kind of like a Jeff McNeil. And Vientos is more of a third baseman / DH. Where they fit into the model as far as the future of the Mets are concerned in 2026, that's another video, another discussion. But the fact is, all 3 of these guys are young players. They've been hitting, and they're going to be part of this going forward down the stretch. And that's huge because, look, Vientos had a great postseason last year. Again, he's starting to come on, had a grand slam the other day in San Diego. Valuable piece to keep. And there was a lot of talk about the Mets moving him for Luis Robert in Chicago. I'm glad that never transpired. I really am. And then you add that with Mauricio and Baty. That's a nice bench a nice mix of young players you can mix and match with. But on top of that, you answer your question in center field as the Mets by going out there, trading 3 prospects, including your number 14 and number 30 ranked prospect, both of which were pitchers, by the way, in the minor leagues, for Cedric Mullins, who is a really good player. I mean, look, I understand the batting average is not great. I understand he's hitting .229 on the year. Okay, I get that. I see it. It's not that great. But 15 home runs, 49 RBIs. He's got some pop. He can steal some bases. You can put him at the top of the order. You can put him, for a little further down towards the bottom half of the order, like the 6th or 7th spot. You can put him in different places. But the bottom line is this. You're going to get a player in Cedric Mullins who plays outstanding outfield defense. Just watch. I'm looking at some of these highlights here. I mean, this guy's crazy. He's like Spider-Man. He's like flying around all over the place. Look at this guy. All right? You're going to have this kind of player making these kind of plays in the outfield and center field. You have Brandon Nimmo, who you can leave out there in left field. You can leave Juan Soto, obviously, in right field. You're going to have Starling Marte coming off the bench, being kind of your 4th outfielder. Jesse Winker, unfortunately, it looks like his season's over. Just couldn't stay healthy this year. The Mets put him on the 60-day DL, or IL, I should say. Maybe there's a chance he comes back, but when they do that, there's a good chance that that player may not return this year. That's unfortunate, but you can mix and match with those guys. Also, Tyrone Taylor, not going anywhere. He's still part of this team, and he's a player who can be that 4th or 5th outfielder and can give you some defense. You know, so there's been a lot of concern about Brandon Nimmo's defense as we move along in his career. And Tyrone Taylor, who plays good defense, really good defense, can still come in there. You can have him and Mullins in the outfield late in games. That's huge. So I like what the Mets did here. They got better in the bullpen. They got better up the middle as far as defense is concerned, especially in the outfield and center field. You get a little more pop. You get a little more pop, if you will, coming out of the center field position with Cedric Mullins now in here. So that's a good move, all for the Mets. As I said, they didn't get the starting pitcher. That would have been nice. But for what they were able to do and what was available to them, they did a very good job. And I got to really applaud what David Sterans did. Got to applaud what Steve Cohen did, Carlos Mendoza, this entire coaching staff. They did a fantastic job. Now, the question is, can they go out there and make it happen? Can they go out there and, hold off the Philadelphia Phillies now in the NL East? Right now, the Mets have a slim lead, half-game lead. Can they keep themselves, if they should fall out of the division lead, stay in front of teams like Milwaukee and Chicago and Cincinnati and San Diego? San Diego, for whatever reason, just owns the Mets. I don't know how else to put it. They just seem to have the Mets number. They're in our heads, folks. And I know it's been a few years since that wild card series in 2022 when the Padres came over here. I know a lot of the names have changed in the last couple of years since. Not all of them, obviously. But it just feels like sometimes the Padres are in the Mets' heads. It really does. And that's a bridge that the Mets have to cross at some point and figure out. They do see them again in September, and God knows you may even see them again in October, whether it be in a division series or a wild card series. But that's something they have to figure out when they see them. When that time comes. But for this deadline, I'm happy where the Mets did at the deadline. As far as the Yankees are concerned, I mean, it's amazing how this season has gone from up to a complete down, and a little up again, and then down again for the Yankee fans. I mean, Yankee fans have been apoplectic in a lot of ways. They really have been. Their team was riding high in first place this year. Then they got swept in Toronto during those 4 games the week before the 4th of July. They have struggled in division against teams like Tampa Bay and Toronto and Boston, and they're 3.5 games out. You have Aaron Judge now out for a couple of weeks here with the elbow issue. Thankfully, it's not a tear, so they don't have to worry about Tommy John surgery, thankfully for them. But they have been having issues at third base. Anthony Volpe can't field right now. 16 errors. Anthony Volpe was supposed to be the heir apparent to Derek Jeter. All the talk, all the pomp and circumstance. And as I said the last couple of years ago when we were covering the Somerset Patriots, Anthony Volpe was there. All the talk was how this was going to be the next Derek Jeter, and he was doing everything he could to, be in line to do that. And right now, it's not working for him. I'm seeing Yankee fans throw this guy under the bus. I'm seeing Yankee fans tear him apart online and on radio. It is ugly. So the Yankees, I got to give them some credit to bring in a couple of guys on the infield at shortstop in Jose Caballero, as well as Ahmed Rosario for a Met, to either A, play some shortstop for this team and give Anthony Volpe a break, because this guy needs a break right now. I don't know if you have to send him down. I don't know if they sit him, but the Yankees need to do something to try to just quiet the noise for him right now. And maybe it's a good thing the Yankees are going on the road this weekend to Miami to play the Marlins. They need to quiet things out for him. But Caballero is, again, weird situation. They traded for him mid-game against Tampa Bay. Basically has to walk over from the visitor dugout to the home dugout yesterday. But he's not a great hitter by any stretch of the imagination. I think he was like a 225 hitter. Let me just pull this up here. Jose Caballero is hitting 226 on the year and is a career 225 hitter. Okay, he's not going to hit a lot, but he's going to play good defense. He's only made 3 errors at shortstop this year. So don't be surprised. I don't know if it's going to happen tonight. I don't have the lineup in front of me right now. Or sometime this weekend, we're going to see him playing shortstop this week to give Volpe a break. So they do that. They bring in Ryan McMahon, of course, from Colorado in a trade to basically replace DJ LeMahieu, as well as Oswald Peraza, who they dumped on the Angels this week. at the trade deadline, so they get rid of him. So the Yankees just transform their entire infield. They bring in Caballero, they bring in Rosario, they bring in McMahon, and say goodbye to the likes of Oswald Peraza and DJ LeMahieu, and they bring in three guys that they feel can provide a better defense and maybe a little more offense. I always think McMahon's going to be the guy that's going to give you some more offense. We've seen that already this week for the Yankees when he won a baseball game against the Rays on Wednesday. So from that standpoint, it's good. Obviously, I think the Yankees could have used another power bat. I really do. Because we don't know what the status is going to be with Aaron Judge coming down here down the stretch of the year. Is he going to be healthy enough to... I mean, he's going to be healthy. You imagine that when he gets back, he'll be ready to go. But who else in that lineup right now for the Yankees is hitting consistently enough to give you some pop? Obviously, there's pop all over the lineup. Every once in a while, you'll get a home run from Jazz Chisholm or Austin Wells. Certainly, Giancarlo Stanton, when you get into the postseason, has a good track record in the playoffs. But I thought the Yankees could have used another bat, another big power bat. But they're going to go more with these guys who are focused on defense and more finesse hitters. And that's fine. That's fine. Also, the Yankees didn't really address their starting rotation during this trade deadline period. I think they, too, like the Mets, were looking around and just couldn't find a taker. They just couldn't find anybody to get somebody in this rotation. So, like the Mets, the Yankees decided to bolster their bullpen. But, man, Brian Cashman went full bore with this. I mean, he went balls to the wall in trying to improve this bullpen. I mean, the list of players that got involved, and I have to pull this up here, in trades is incredible. Okay? And all of that without having to touch a top 7 player, which is amazing. Jake Bird, they get in another trade with Colorado. They trade a couple of prospects, including Rock Riggio. They pick up Camilo Doval from San Francisco, who can close games. He's not going to close here, maybe a setup man here with the Yankees. They get him for a group of prospects, including Tristan Vierling. And then they also bring in, I think probably the more interesting player here is a pitcher is going to be David Bednar from the Pittsburgh Pirates, another guy who can top 98 to 100 miles an hour in that fastball, and they get him for a group of prospects. So what a job by the Yankees. They didn't touch a single top 7 prospect in their farm system to make any of these deals happen, and they made a bunch of deals. So that's a heck of a job by Brian Cashman, but they put their bullpen now looks completely different. Whereas they had so many questions, right? You didn't know who was going to set up for Devin Williams. Sometimes you didn't even know if Devin Williams was going to close games for the Yankees. Now you know, if you're a Yankee fan, that you're going to have Williams in the 9th inning. You're probably going to have Doval in the 8th, maybe Bednar in the 7th, and all of a sudden that bullpen looks a lot stronger for the Yankees than it did just a day ago. And the Yankees' chances of getting to the postseason again look a lot stronger than they did a day ago because they're trying to fight off the Boston Red Sox, the Texas Rangers, the Mariners, as I just mentioned, and they're still trailing the Blue Jays by 3.5 games in the AL East. So from that standpoint, folks, both teams, New York Yankees and Mets, did very well for themselves on paper at the deadline. Again, the question is going to be, as I said with the Mets about 5 minutes ago, now that proof is in the pudding. Now they got to go out there and execute and see if they can get this done and put together a run towards the postseason. And once we get to October, we'll see how it all plays out at that point. So a productive trade deadline for both the Mets and the Yankees. Now we'll see how we can do here in these games coming up this weekend. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fox Sports Talk Nation.